Hello everyone, my name is Cora Geogiou and I'm a card designer on Fractured in Alterac Valley. And welcome to a new roundtable edition of Hearthside Chat. At the start of the year, we saw our 5 Horde mercenaries breaking into the Barrens and beginning their journeys. Then we saw our Alliance mercenaries leveling up and taking on the big city of Stormwind. And now it's time for them to go head-to-head in classic Horde versus Alliance fashion as we take on the snowy battleground of Alterac Valley. Today we're going to be shoveling aside some of that snow and uncovering and then revealing to you for the first time some new cards in this expansion. And to help us look deeper into the design, art, and narrative that go into creating a new Hearthstone expansion, I'm joined by senior game designer Matthew London.
Hey, Cora.
Our art supervisor Jeremy Cranford.
Hey, everyone.
And game designer Leo Robles Gonzalez.
What's up?
Matt, I'm going to start with you because I know that a lot of the narrative and story that went into actually crafting the Year of the Griffin came from your beautiful brain. So all of these characters must be very near and dear to your heart at this point, but I do have to ask, which one are you most excited to see leveling up in AV?
Yeah, it's very hard to choose among them. They're all very exciting, and as we've mentioned, we've already revealed Lightforged Cariel, a new Paladin hero card. Cariel's sister, Tamson, is also back, and she's going to be represented as Dreadlich Tamson on a Warlock hero card. At the end of the story of United in Stormwind, we thought that Tamson perished, locked in mortal combat with Cariel, but she is in fact back now as a very powerful undead lich, resurrected by Kazakus and Lady Prester, who've been pulling the strings so far in the year.
But as, you know, I'm sure a lot of y'all at home know, a Dreadlich would be nothing if it weren't for their phylactery, which sort of keeps them alive in this world. So, you know, we had to do our due diligence, and we did, of course, give Tamson her iconic phylactery. So let's go ahead and check out Tamson's phylactery. Leo, I know you had a hand in designing this wonderful legendary spell, so go ahead and tell us about it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's not every day that you get to design a hero card for a lich and also a spell for their phylactery. I think the core thing about a phylactery is that they're crucial for any lich, right? You can kill a lich, but they'll just come right back if the phylactery is still intact. So you have to go for the phylactery if you really actually want to get rid of them. This theme of undying and just like overall death was kind of the core that started the idea of the card. And what it evolved into is kind of a really powerful piece for any Warlock deck that looks to sacrifice their own minions that have death rattles, decks that go wide on the board. I think one of the coolest parts about this is that you get to have your own curated pool of sacrificed souls of your friendly minions from throughout the game, and you get to choose one of them to apply its burden of death on all of your minions. And honestly, there's no other card that's quite as warlocky as that one.
The conflict in Alterac Valley can be very dark, but, you know, we are Hearthstone, and at the end of the day, we love to liven things up a little bit and bring some of that levity and some of that fun into the game as well. And what's more fun than having some fun in the snow with a snowball fight? Check it out. And Leo, we'll hand it back to you because I know that you've got a really cool story actually behind the making of this card.
Yeah, so fun fact about Snowball Fight is that this card actually existed before the Alterac Valley expansion existed. Before I was, hired onto the Hearthstone team, I used to make a bunch of custom Hearthstone cards just as a fan, and one of the ones that turned out to be my favorite ones was one called Snowball Fight, where it's this card, it's a spell that you play and you deal damage to a minion and freeze it, and then that minion throws a snowball to someone else and, rinse and repeat. The design that we landed on for the set has changed a little bit since where it started, but that same idea of throwing snowballs and freezing all sorts of minions stuck all the way through. The way that this actually made its way into the set was we really focused in on getting that Alterac Valley nostalgia, like World of Warcraft battleground feeling, really nailed down in the set. And at one point, we took a look at all of the cards and we were like, we've got that pretty much on lock. But any sort of cards that are like fun and whimsical, like anything that really brings the spirit of Hearthstone that a lot of people love, we didn't have too many of those throughout the set. So we made an effort to kind of figure out different ways to be silly or be goofy in Alterac Valley. And one of the best ways to do that is, you got a bunch of snow around, right? Might as well start a snowball fight, right? I was able to pull this card idea out from my back pocket and show it to the team, and it stuck around, and the gameplay's been pretty solid.
You're absolutely right. We had these sort of dueling ideas and goals when we were making Alterac Valley. And of course, we had to have that nostalgia and that deeper theme of the conflict between the Horde and the Alliance. But we also wanted to take advantage of the snowy topography and the environment that we've got going on to create some of those fun and lighter cards. Jeremy, I know you know quite a bit about the deep conflict between Alterac Valley, but maybe you can talk a little bit about how we visually represent both the dark and the light sides of this set.
Yeah, I think that's one of the spaces that Hearthstone does so well at, is being able to show these really cute and charming moments like Snowball Fight right next to these really dark, powerful images like Dread Lich, Tamson. The snowy environments were so beautiful. It was a really fun space to explore. And if you look at cards like Dunboulder Bunker and the Iceblood Garrison, you're really going to like them for just these beautiful environmental paintings, but also when you see those iconic locations, you're really going to experience this sense of nostalgia.
Yeah, we're going to keep those wholesome vibes going a little bit here with another classic representation of fun in the snow with an all-new mage spell called Build a Snowman. It was really important for us to take advantage of the spell schools that we had created in Forged in the Barrens and really expand on the identity of the Frost spell school for this expansion. The two obvious places that we could put Frost spells were in Shaman and Mage, but we really wanted them to stand apart from each other still and have different ways to utilize these Frost spells. So with Mage in particular, in this expansion, they really love having large spells in their hand, but that can often leave them a little bit stranded in the early game with nothing to do. So Build a Snowman is a great example of a frost spell that starts quite small, but can build up until you have a 9-mana frost spell in your hand. And it also gives you that consistent board presence and pressure throughout the game, as well as always allowing you to have a frost spell in your hand to activate some cards that might care about those things. So be on the lookout for those. But visually, it's also probably my favorite card in the set because, it can be difficult for us to tell a story on a static image. But with Build a Snowman, we actually have 6 images to be able to get that story across. We've got the 3 spells and then the 3 tokens that they generate. To watch the process of these pieces developing was just really, really cool.
Yeah, this is always one of my favorite assignments when game design comes to the art team and asks us to tell a story over several sequential images, like in Build a Snowman. Early on we had the first sketch of the snowman. It looked really good, it was really cute. And during the art review, Matt had this great idea. He said, what if we change the carrot nose into carrot tusk, and we kind of create a snow troll instead of a snowman? And everyone loved the idea, and that's how we ended up with the character in the first image. Then the story progresses, and in the second image we have Build a Snow Brute. It's this really kind of foreboding image with the mage troll raising his hands in the foreground, and in the background you'll see this evil troll rising up from the ground. It's a nice dark moment. And then the final image of the story ends with a more of a comedic tone where we have 2 small gnomes and they're running for their life from this giant 2-headed ogre. And it's just a real classic Hearthstone moment I think the players are going to enjoy.
Yeah, it's very quintessentially Hearthstone. But I do want to take a small shift here away from these wonderful characters that we're creating and talk a little bit more about these awesome iconic landmarks in Alterac Valley. So in AV, some cards are going to feature one of these iconic landmarks rather than a character. And these cards will have effects that then last for 3 turns. And we like to call them objectives. So let's take a look at one featuring a central point of action in Alterac Valley with the Field of Strife. We wouldn't be telling a real story without being able to address some of what's actually going on in our environment. So Matt, maybe you can shed some light on the conflict that takes place between the Frostwolves and the Stormpike here in Alterac Valley.
Sure. The battle going on in Alterac Valley is a mortal conflict between the Stormpike dwarves and the Frostwolf orcs. Both of these factions are rich in lore in Warcraft. In fact, our shaman hero Thrall himself is a Frostwolf. We've got 2 mercenaries in our cast in Year of the Griffin, Rokara, who's a Frostwolf, and Tavish, who's a Stormpike. He's our dwarf hunter. And so these 2 groups, represented not just by Horde and Alliance, but by our 10 mercenaries, are going to be crashing together in Alterac Valley for dominance of this area. And the Field of Strife is this, large snowy expanse where there's nowhere to hide. And so that's a place where the two forces really crash together in a clattering of weapons.
Jeremy, were these landmark cards an exciting sort of new angle for the art team to tackle?
Yeah, the art team always gets really excited to show the environments of the different locations. I remember in the quest cards in Angora, we got to explore the really key locations here again in Alterac Valley. And the Field of Strife was one that had to be in the set when you think about all of the epic battles that took place there between the Horde and the Alliance. And at first we thought about showing a typical crowded melee battle scene in this zone. But then we decided to do something I think that's a little more poetic. We thought, what if we show the battlefield after the battle is finished? We see weapons and armor strewn all about the field. And that's how the painting came in. It was really good, but it felt like it was missing something. And so I went back to the artist and I asked them, to add a suit of armor right where a beam of sunlight kind of breaking through the clouds. Those little moments and those little storytelling details, I really think helps make the art really special in the set.
From a design perspective, the objective cards are something that we've focused on since the very beginning. I think the Alterac Valley is home to a lot of really iconic buildings and areas that a lot of players from, World of Warcraft know and love. And Field of Strife is one of those in the center, and we iterated a lot on the different types of ways to do objective cards. One of the very first ones was having effects, or like minions that swap sides on the board, or minions that are really strong but affect both players. But where we landed was these cards where they're spells that last for 3 turns. And I think we really fell in love with the gameplay here because they give you a level of persistence without going into permanence, right? If you take a look at like a minion with an effect, like a passive effect, they're really fun to play with, but minions only really last 1 or 2 turns in Hearthstone, so you don't really get to like juice the effect out. Whereas something like a hero card, they last for the rest of the game. Your hero power is completely new, so we can't really go too crazy there because it might warp the game for the rest of the game, right? And that's where these really shine, is kind of in between. Because they only last 3 turns, we can put more powerful, more attractive effects on them, but you're guaranteed to be able to use them only for 3 turns. So, your opponent won't feel helpless against them, right? Once one is played, you and your opponent both can change your game plan to either maximize or minimize the effect of these objective cards.
Yeah, sort of having that element of added consistency in a deck is really how you're able to take advantage of the specific archetype that you're building into. And we do like to be pretty careful when it comes to effects that your opponent can't necessarily interact with, but that doesn't mean there isn't counterplay here. So similar to maybe a sigil or a secret, they are going to last for 3 turns, but then it's in the opponent's hands to decide how they want to play around those effects and their very concrete duration. So that was sort of a fun one, and being able to explore those different objective landmarks visually. We've got some really beautiful art pieces for you. So excited for everybody to be able to see all of those. And we do have one more card to reveal here. It's another landmark that you would probably be familiar with if you played through Alterac Valley, but important to note that this is not an objective. It is, however, a really sweet druid spell. So let's go ahead and check out Capture Coldtooth Mine. And Leo, was there sort of a specific playstyle in mind for the card design here, or were you really just trying to lean into that choose one flexibility?
Well, like with any choose one card, flexibility is key, right? Being able to have multiple options on one card is what makes Druid feel like Druid. But I think this card specifically, in Alterac Valley, when you're playing in the actual battleground, you're constantly making choices about, do I go here, do I go there? What should we do when we get there? Like, what goals should we set out for ourselves in order to, win the conflict? And this card kind of condenses that into just, a single card. You're choosing, do you want to go get the resources, or do you want to go get the supplies that are in Coldtooth Mine? In terms of gameplay, I'm honestly really excited for this card. I think being able to draw specific cards from your deck has always been really, really powerful in Hearthstone. If you look at a card like Witchwood Piper, which draws you your lowest cost minion, and then a card like Talon Forgering, which draws you your highest cost minion, both of those cards have seen pretty good amounts of play. And this is just both of those, best of both worlds put into one. So I think based on how you construct your deck or the situation at hand in a given game, you're going to find different ways to use this card. That could be something like being able to get your lowest cost removal spell, or getting the highest cost minion in your deck that the whole thing revolves around. So I'm really excited to see what people do with this card.
Well, that's all we have to reveal for you today. Thank you so much for joining us as we hopefully get a chance to shed some insight onto all the different areas that it takes to make a brand new Hearthstone expansion. We hope that whether you're on the Horde or the Alliance side, that you're ready to join us in some snowy scuffles in Fractured in Alterac Valley. We'll see you in the tavern.
For the Alliance!